All right, Boris Johnson, you may now interrupt.
Morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very, very good, thank you.
Now, before we talk about you,
Yeah.
let's talk about immigration, which is in the papers today.
Sure.
David Cameron going to make a speech in which he's going to talk about keeping immigrant families off council house waiting lists. There's talk of making immigrants pay to go to see a GP. Is that all good for you?
I think certainly you've got to address the problem of uncontrolled immigration that was really, I think, a function of decisions taken by the Labour Party a long time ago. That has certainly led to huge strains on the social security system, on education budgets, on housing. And yes, it's absolutely right for the Prime Minister and the government now to try and sort that out.
Do you think it's a good policy?
Well, I mean, I have to look at the details of what they're proposing.
Well, you're not rushing at it with enthusiasm.
No, I am. I mean, if it's going to make the difference and help us to stop people coming here who want to leech off the system, to put it in, crude terms, without damaging, this is the key thing, without damaging our openness to talent, then I completely support it. It is important that we strike a balance here. London, the UK economy benefits hugely from attracting talented people from around the world. And one of the beefs they have at the moment is a visa system that basically means we have huge numbers of tourists from China going to Paris and indeed to Belgium. I mean, there are more Chinese tourists going to Belgium at the moment than there are to the UK. Not Belgium, a very wonderful place, but we could be doing much, much better business, much bigger business, if we had a more sensible visa policy, my view.
But this language, you just used the word leech. The Bishop of Dudley says politicians' response to immigration is wholly disproportionate.
Well, I think, again, you've got to be careful what you're talking about, and I am pro talented people being able to come here.
Well, who isn't for that? Come on.
And work hard. And there are many such people who've come here and have done enormous amount of good for the UK economy. What you can't have is a situation in which families are arriving as benefit tourists or whatever. Now, I happen to think that those are probably in a minority. And,
do you think some politicians have flammed it up a bit?
And I think there's a great deal of antagonism towards immigrants in the country. And I think
politicians?
And I think it's reflecting a popular view. There was a clip, but there was a thing on question. There was a thing on question time.
If the public are misinformed and the politicians simply reflect that, that's okay.
I'm not saying the public are necessarily misinformed. I think the people have been going through very tough times, and what's been happening basically is that British business has made the case for having, in the last 20, 30 years, British business has made the case for allowing them to have access to skilled workers from around the world, indeed, from the rest of the EU, in a way that has made life very difficult, often for people who grew up in this country, went to this country's schools, and who are competing for those jobs. And there's a real indignation about the fact that they feel crowded out of the labour market. Okay. Now, my solution is not to be hostile to people coming from around the world, because that's people who are benefit tourists, right?
Nasty.
It's right, but to do more to help and to educate and to encourage our people who grew up in this country and who have been chronically failed by the system. Right. So the way to tackle the problem is to deal with the educational deficit we've got in our country.
Understood. I want to ask you about the Olympic Stadium, which you were talking about this week, and you were talking about the future and telling the critics to stop being so negative.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There is a more fundamental problem, though, which I didn't really hear you talk about this week, and I want to ask you about it. That the problems with the future financing of this stadium and West Ham and all the rest of it, weren't they, by definition, caused by the fact not enough planning was done before the stadium was built to think about its future? Wasn't that a bit of a problem?
Eddie, you're right.
Great. Let's move on.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to hide it from you that was a decision that was taken in 2006 by my illustrious Labour predecessor.
What can you do,
I'm embarrassed by mentioning him by name, but there you go. They decided they weren't going to build a stadium that was compatible with football. They were going to save money temporarily by going for an athletics-only stadium with all the wrong sightlines. Now, I think that the future of that Olympic stadium, which really entered into the hearts of the country, is to be open to all sorts of possibilities, including football.
But do you accept that you've had to make the best of a bad job? I mean, looking at the figures, I mean, West Ham come out of this pretty well, and the taxpayer doesn't come out of it terribly well.
I think if you look at that deal, and it took a long time to agree, and I think we're getting not only the £15 million upfront contribution, we're getting a rent, we're getting a share of the beverages and the hospitality and all the rest of it. About £10 million a year will come to the taxpayer from that stadium.
Right.
Now, there's no Olympic stadium around the world, a post-Olympic stadium, that's had that kind of legacy. And don't forget, West Ham are only the anchor tenant, right? So they're just going to be one of the many attractions and teams that will play there.
I know you can talk about this all day, but I want to talk about you.
Well, that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid.
This documentary.
That's enough.
You haven't seen this documentary,
I have not, no.
I have.
Right, what, Eddie?
Why did you agree to it?
Over and above the call of duty, if I may say.
Why did you agree to do it?
I'll tell you, it's very simple. It's like when the News of the World ring up and they say, or whatever, and they say, listen, you're going to be in this story. You can either cooperate or not cooperate. And Michael Cockrell, the producer and presenter, the guy who did it.
Michael Cockrell blackmailed you, is that what you're saying?
Effectively, yeah. What he said was, look, the BBC have commissioned this. It is going to appear. And so we faced a choice, either to try to help or rather prissily, to just stand on one side and let them do whatever they wanted. And I thought on the whole, it was probably wiser, given that it was going to happen anyway, to try to say something rather than leave the field clear to, people who might want to put the boot in.
Let me ask you about some of the things that came up in the documentary.
Right. Well, I haven't seen it, so
but this happened in your life, so you know about this. The Times let you go after you made up a quote. Why did you make up a quote?
Well, this again, these are big terms for what happened. Well, I can tell you the whole thing. I mean, are you sure our viewers wouldn't want to hear more about?
Well, if you don't want to talk about the made-up quote, let me talk about something.
It was a long and lamentable story.
Okay, but you made a quote up.
Well, what happened was that I ascribed events that were supposed to have taken place before the death of Piers Gaveston to events that actually took place after the death.
You made something up. Let me ask you about another little.
I mean, I mildly sandpapered something.
Let me ask you about a barefaced lie.
Very embarrassing. I'm very sorry about it.
Let me ask you about a barefaced lie. When you were in Michael Howard's team, you denied to him you were having an affair. It turned out you were, and he sacked you for that. Why did you lie to your party?
Well, I mean, again, with great respect, on that, I never had any conversation with Michael Howard about that matter, and I don't.
You did lie.
Well, I don't propose to go into all that again.
I don't blame you.
No, well, why should I? I mean, I've been through, that question a lot with the. Watch the documentary.
Okay.
Why don't we talk about something else?
The programme also includes. Well, this is about your integrity.
Okay.
The programme includes your reaction as you listen to a phone call, in which your friend Darius Guppy asks you to supply the address of a journalist, so that he can have him physically assaulted. The words beaten up and broken ribs are said to you. And you, having heard that, you tell your friend, Darius Guppy, you will supply the address. What does that say about you, Boris Johnson? Well, aren't you, in fact, making up quotes, lying to your party leader, wanting to be part of someone being physically assaulted? You're a nasty piece of work, aren't you? Well,
Eddie, I think all three things I would dispute.
Well, you don't factually dispute them.
Well, I do, and I could, if we had a long time, which we don't, I could explain that I think all three interpretations you're putting on those things aren't wholly fair. And certainly the final thing which you raise, which is the case of my old friend Darius. Yes, it was certainly true that he was in a bit of a state, and I did humour him in a long phone conversation, from which absolutely nothing eventuated. And there you go. But I think if any of us had our phone conversations bugged, they might, people say all sorts of fantastical things whilst they're talking to their friends.
But even Conrad Black, your friend.
I think, yeah, go on.
Convicted fraudster. Even he says he doesn't trust you completely.
I hadn't seen that Conrad had said that, but obviously, nonetheless, I've got a great admiration for Conrad, who, in my view, is a pretty good journalist and a good proprietor.
If you dispute some of these things, you can be absolutely direct and honest and straightforward with me. Whenever you're asked about Prime Minister, and goodness knows Michael Cockerell had a go, you obfuscate. You say, well, I want to be a pop star, I want to be a painter, I want to do all of those things. But you've never actually said what is clearly plain as a pikestaff. Of course, like many politicians, you want to be Prime Minister. Why don't you just say the words? What's the problem?
Well, just if I may, permission to obfuscate.
Oh, please
can I just go back to what I've said before, which is
no, don't repeat yourself. The documentary's full of people. Your sister, for example, gives a blistering performance. Yeah, who talk about your ambitions. Your father even suggests they could change the rules so you could become party leader and Prime Minister. But the words will not cross your lips. Why not?
Because it's not going to happen.
No, but it's about your desire, not whether it's going to happen.
Well, I'll tell you what I want.
You're not going to land on the moon either. But do you want to be Prime Minister? Say it.
Well, what I want is for David Cameron to win this election,
of course,
which he deserves to do.
Do you want to be Prime Minister?
I want to do everything I possibly can to help. And in those circumstances, it is completely nonsensical for me to indulge, this increasingly hysterical.
You could end it all just by saying what you know to be true.
What, that I don't want to?
That you want to be Prime Minister.
No. What I want is to spend the next my time remaining as mayor to do as well as I can as mayor of London. I've got 3 and a bit years to go. I also hang on, Eddie.
Your inability to give a straight answer to a straight question.
I think people would rightly conclude that I don't want to talk about this subject because I want to talk about what I think should happen, which is the government deserves to win the next election.
Okay.
And indeed, I think it's a measure of the triviality of politics that I thought I was coming on to talk about the budget and housing in London. I don't mind all these questions about this other stuff, but I think it is more important that we look at the things that are happening now in the economy, and we look at what the government is doing to help. And by the way, the reason I want David Cameron to win, and the reason I don't want Ed Miliband to win, is because I'm genuinely alarmed by some of the things the Labour Party is saying.
Okay,
and I strongly agree with what Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair have said about Labour, which is that I don't think they're offering anything approaching the right prospectus for the country.
A final question.
So look at the budget.
Oh.
Look at what.
We don't have any time, I'm afraid.
Well, you babbled on about these other things.
It's a wonderful programme about you.
What people want to know is and they don't care about phone conversations with my friends 20 years ago. They don't care about some ludicrous so-called made-up quote, or what's the third accusation? I can't remember.
Lying to Michael Howard.
Yeah, Michael Howard. What they care about...
Where is he now, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Well, what they care about, Eddie, is what is happening in the UK economy and who of the two parties has the best prospectus for recovery. Right. And if you look at what George Osborne put forward this week, or last week rather, in the budget, I think that is the way forward. I think it's unbelievable that Labour have got absolutely nothing to say.
I hate to
no, you're not cutting me off. You're not cutting me off.
But Labour have got
nothing to say about how to help people on middle incomes who need their homes. I'm certainly not after what you've told me. No, I'm not going to watch it.
All right, Boris Johnson, thank you.